afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock, and I will call the Joint Review Board to order. We'll do the roll. We got Mark from the school district, Tom from the county, Paul from LTC, and Roberta as the public member, and then myself, Ryan, as the city rep. So if folks in the audience and on the board, if you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks everybody. If we could have a motion to approve the minutes for our last meeting.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, state aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Chair votes aye. Minutes are approved. All right, moving right along down the agenda, we have review of responsibilities of the Joint Review Board. Who wants to take this one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As some of you know, my name is Kayla Thorpe. I'm Associate Municipal Advisor here at Ellers. I'm joined by my colleague, Phil Cosson, who you all know very well. As we discussed last year when we were here with some of the TID creations, the role of the Joint Review Board is to first review the legal requirements in the project plan have been met, that the but-for test has been met, and the project plan is complete. At this stage, this is called the initial Joint Review Board meeting. We will just be reviewing the project plan and what is contained in this. This project plan will be coming back to you for final approval should it get through Plan Commission, which is following this meeting, and City Council approval, at which those two things, those two bodies also have the same authority to kind of review and make sure the but-for test has been satisfied. At this point in time, there is no formal action this body will take today, but like I said, it will come back in a few weeks after council approval.
All right, thanks. Questions from any of the members up here? All right, we'll jump right along. Review and discuss draft project plan for tax increment district number 21.
You just stay standing. And I don't know if what I'm having plugged in here can be shared with the screen. There we go. Nope.
Hang on. Do I got to do something up here, Scott?
No.
It says that it's plugged in. Give me 1 second.
Can you try unplugging it and plugging it back in?
I'm trying to detect a second screen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not detecting it at all, but I can just move forward.
Yeah, try it on this one.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Yay.
Okay, I am going to go through a couple of TID fundamentals and TID basics before we get into the project plans for themselves. Just a refresher for some of us in the room who have heard this before or those of us who have not. What is tax incremental financing? Now, there's two common nomenclatures used, TIF and TID. The tax increment financing is the tool, the mechanism that the tax incremental district facilitates. District is the physical boundaries of the parcels contained within the land that will be used to finance the tax increment projects. This is the most powerful and one of the only economic development tools available to municipalities in Wisconsin. There are very few other avenues to facilitate and incentivize economic development in Wisconsin, given the strict levy limits and kind of the constraints put on municipal budgets and taxes in Wisconsin that are continually to get tighter and tighter. The actual district allows municipalities to capture the incremental property value, which is over and beyond the base value, and then kind of funnel that money back into the district to pay for the project costs that directly benefit that area that has been designated as the tax increment district. Why do we use TIF? Specifically in Wisconsin, it's required a cost participation by all of your overlying taxing jurisdictions, hence the Joint Review Board, that you all get a say in what money is spent and the projects in the life of the district before you. It also addresses a lack of other financial resources, incentives available. Like I said, property tax limits in Wisconsin don't allow municipalities really to provide any outside incentives that are outside of the TIF district. Promotes economic development and redevelopment, specifically redevelopment in our more densely populated and urban areas, and a cooperation between public and private sectors, really to make the entire district happen, to make the finances work, and then also to facilitate and spur that development. How the increment is generated and distributed, kind of outlined in this project or this graph. In blue, you'll see the baseline property value. That is the base value of the properties contained within the district at the date of creation. That value and the property taxes generated on that value will be frozen as of the creation date of the district. And the creation date is marked as the council action. Taxes on that value will be distributed to the overlying taxing jurisdictions just as they are today. It is the increment or the appreciation in value, either economically or due to new development, that over and beyond the base value, that is what we're talking about as far as the increment collected within the district. The district will capture all that value over the 20 or 27-year life of the district, depending on what time or type of district is, and the taxes collected on that value go back into the district to pay those project costs. After the TID is terminated and the full valuation comes online, taxes collected on that full value or that additional value plus the base value will be distributed to the overlying taxing jurisdictions again, just as they are. And how taxes are allocated, this is just kind of an additional slide to explain what I just did. The mill rate for each taxing jurisdiction on that baseline property values distributed equitably just as they are today. The increment is a combined tax rate using all of the tax rates. Therefore, the taxing jurisdictions are foregoing the taxes on the additional increment for that period of time to pay for those project costs. It's important to note that tax increment collection in the actual dollar amount is based on an equalized value basis and not an assessed value basis. And so some of the exhibits you'll see from us have a different tax rate than is what on the property tax bill, and that is simply because it's on an equalized basis and not the assessed basis you would normally receive. How do TIDs impact property taxes and the levy? TID project costs, including debt service, any type of incentive, and administrative fees are paid from those incremental taxes. So the taxes that are collected over and beyond that base value. There are no impacts on general taxes that can be covered by the TID. All of those baseline property taxes are put back into the city's general fund to be used for all of the city services. We are simply talking about the increment collection to pay for the property taxes or for the project costs within the district. Something that we are not dealing with is encountering in many municipalities is a sentiment that the general property tax levy is increasing because of development contained within the TID. And that is correct under one philosophy. The only base building, and by base building I mean the ability for the city to build their property tax base prior to any allowable exemptions under the statutes, is to utilize net new construction. And net new construction that you can take on your levy limit worksheet and on an annual basis includes net new construction within a TID and without a TID. So a policy decision would be of the City Council to utilize the full levy limit or net new construction amount to increase the base property tax levy. If they did take the TID in amount, that is the only impact it would have on general taxes. While the TID is open, any additional levy resulting from the new construction is paid for by the property values outside of the TID. So it is a percentage of value taken off the rolls plus value put on the rolls. It's netted out into a percentage amount. And so it's really important to understand that while some of us, and there's a common misconception that TID increments are paid, or TID taxes are being paid for by properties outside of the district, that is not true. It is the ability of the city to increase its property tax levy due to the value being added as net new construction. It's important to note that this is the only base building exercise the city can take, and so it really is that policy decision when the budget comes before the council to whether utilize that amount or not to. Another common misconception we run into is TID impacts on school districts and the funding formula used from the school district. And I'm going to read this verbatim, one, because it kind of is a little wonky, but this is directly from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue, the Equalization Bureau, about school funding equalization formulas. The formula operates under the principle of equal tax rate for equal per pupil expenditures. In pure form, this means that a school district's property tax rate does not depend on the property tax base of the district, but on the level of expenditures. The rate at which the school costs are aided through the formula is determined by comparing a school district's per pupil tax base to the state's guaranteed tax base. Equalization aid is provided to make up the difference between the district's annual tax base and the state's guaranteed tax base. Thus, there is an inverse relationship between the equalization aid and property valuations. Those districts with low per pupil property valuations receive a larger share of their costs through the equalization formula than districts with a higher per pupil property valuation. And so when we talk about how schools are formulated, we just wanted to make clear that it's on a per pupil basis and not necessarily driven by the tax value of the underlying jurisdiction. I'm going to go through some of the project plan amendment and boundary amendment items for TID 21. Feel free to stop me along the way if you have any questions. TID 21 was created last year, just about a year ago, on March 25th, 2024. Originally created to pay the cost of new public infrastructure, cleanup and remediation and demolition, along with land acquisitions to facilitate development and redevelopment within the district. Development incentives and other project costs, all which are required to rehabilitate and conserve the area, would be generated through the increment collected. And really develop and redevelop a variety of housing options for the city. There are some ancillary and commercial uses to be used within the district, but none of those are being added as of this amendment. TID 21, this is a project plan and a territory amendment. The city is allowed up to 4 project plan amendments, so this is the first of those 4, and can have unlimited boundary amendments, meaning you can add or remove parcels on an unlimited basis. And those are permitted under 66-1105-4H2 of the statutes. This specific amendment is to amend the definitions of some projects and to add project costs. The main driver is the city plans to partner with the Kohler Foundation and the John Michael Kohler Arts Center to create a public arts and creation hub. That is the driver behind this amendment and the project costs being associated with that. Just as normal, we have to satisfy the 12% equalized value test, meaning no municipality can have more than 12% of their TID and equalized value contained within a tax increment district at any one point in time. Since this district is a complete the amendment is a complete overlay of TID 17, meaning all of the parcels that we're adding to TID 21 are already in TID 17, there is no base value being added, and so we are still at the 3.22%. Remaining capacity for the city is $414 million of value that could be added into a district. A little hard to tell here, but the original boundaries of the tax incremental district number 21 are in gray, and the parcels being added are in orange. In your packet or the actual project plan, you'll see you'll see appendixes with all of the actual parcels, but just get a general understanding of where this is in relation to the existing boundaries. Like I said, the purpose is to facilitate the creation of the Arts and Creation Hub, co-working and art space, and the only project costs we are adding for this are $895,000 in property acquisition costs. And like I mentioned, this is the first of 4 allowable project plan amendments. As part of our project plan amending process, we like to not only state and restate the original project costs, but also give an update as to what projects have been completed, started, or spent to date. And so you'll see those here, all of the original projects that were contained within TID 21, moving left to right, what the original costs were, how much were spent to date, what we are adding, and that's where that $895,000 property acquisition comes in, and any non-project costs. Non-project costs are costs that are paid for outside of the district because they directly benefit the district, but the majority of the project costs related to the Penn Avenue Bridge are contained within the district. So we are noting that the portion that does not benefit the district will be paid for by other means than the increment incentive. So altogether, is a total remaining project cost of about $176 million. This is one, because the district's only 1 year old, and two, some of these projects have not started yet. The Arts Hub will be a tax-exempt property, therefore there's no value being added to the district because of it, so that means that all of the other parcels within the district are facilitating this community Arts Hub. But we wanted to show you and restate the development assumptions that drive the increment collection currently. These have remained unchanged to date as of your current project plan that you adopted last year. And the main reason it's remained unchanged is we have not received certified equalized values for anything that was constructed in 2024. Those values will be released and certified on August 15th. The current equalized tax rate for the city is $15.88. And so in this exercise, we try to project out what the total increment collection over the life of the district will be. This also has remained unchanged because there will be no value added. I also want to point out that it's important to note that not just the center that is going to be targeted for the events or the creative and art studio are part of the amendment. There are a number of other parcels that could be redeveloped throughout the life of the district that would add value over and beyond what we're projecting here. We are projecting a future value add of just over $328 million, and that will have a future value increment of just over $157 million. We've accounted for a stable tax rate. We have seen equalized tax rates drop across the state. To kind of offset that, we've accounted for, I believe it's 1.5% of economic change, meaning natural appreciation on those property values over time, which we're also seeing across the state. Now, putting all these pieces together in the cash flow to show you that not only does the district sustain all these expenses that are in the current project plan, that the additional $895,000 can also be absorbed within the district. The TID 17, as to the reason why this could not be facilitated in TID 17, is that the long-term cash flow showed that it could not absorb the project costs, therefore the overlay. I have built in the $895,000 acquisition cost to be as part of a larger city borrowing in 2025. That will be a policy decision for staff and the council at the time, whether to include that or to plan to advance it from other funds. But this is just the exercise showing you how the revenues and expenses can absorb that small increased expenses and about $153 million in expenses over the 27-year life of this district. And so like I just mentioned, the added property acquisition costs are projected as part of the city's 2025 borrowing. Estimated tax increments about $157 million to pay for all of those expenses. And the cash flow model is just an illustration of how all these projects could be funded. It does not marry anybody to these projects. All of the projects, the expenditures, construction, everything still has to go through its normal approval process as it would if it was not included in a district. This just provides the mechanism to fund them and show them how they could be funded throughout the life of the district. We are proposing that this district would still close in 2052, which is at the end of its useful life. Any questions on TID 21?
Questions from board members? Roberta?
Thank you. So if TID 21, I can't remember if it was this one or the other one, we're going to be borrowing money from performing TIDs to help this TID?
The original plan called for future increment sharing. So this would be the recipient TID. TIDs 22 and 24 would be the donor TIDs. That is not a guaranteed value at this point in time or a guaranteed proposition. That would require project plans amendments in all of those related TIDs. But the cash flow is showing about $1.5 million coming in from TID 22 and about 1.4 from TID 24. And those have remained unchanged from the original project plan.
From the originals of the 21 and...
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else on TID 21? All right, let's keep it going. We'll jump into tax increment district number 25.
Before you today is the project plan to create tax incremental district number 25. It is a proposed district that would facilitate the rehab and conservation of a single parcel, which is known, at least to us, as the former Aurora Hospital site. A rehab and conservation district has 27-year allowable life. The purpose of creating this district is to pay for the new public infrastructure associated with facilitating the development, the land acquisition, development incentives, and other project costs as defined in the detailed project list. The development that is happening or proposed to be happening on this property is the development of 21 single-family homes, each with approximately 1/4 to 1/3 acre lots. The 12% test is done independently on each district, whether they're being created at the same time or separately. And so the base value of this parcel is $1.4 million, and that gets us to a percentage of 3.25, of which the city is utilizing tax incremental districts within the city, leaving a remaining residual capacity of $412 million. The detailed project lists include $163,000 for site acquisition reimbursement costs to the city, public infrastructure costs of about $600,000, and I believe that is water and sewer main extensions to facilitate the development. Development incentives of $1.6 million, a repayment of the advance the city's already made for some things of $203,000, interest on long-term debt of about $375,000, financing costs of $10,000, and ongoing planning and administrative costs of $470,000, for a total anticipated project expenditures of $3.4 million. Again, to highlight, approval of the project plan does not authorize these specific projects or their specific dollar amount. It just makes them a TID eligible expense. The proposed build-out schedule calls for 5 homes in 2025, 8 in 26, and 8 in 2027. It's important to note that there is a 2-year lag between construction, valuation, and increment generation revenue. So things, and that's kind of shown here on the increment projection. Construction that happens in 2025 will receive a valuation of 1/126, which is a revenue year or property tax collection year of 1/127. So just an understanding of kind of how the flow of funds work, and that immediate construction does not correlate to immediate property tax revenue. We've made some conservative estimates of about $400,000 per single-family house. The city intends to utilize incentives to facilitate the development of quote-unquote starter houses in the $400,000 range, and that there will be, or is anticipated to be, a small number of private sale lots and custom home constructions on those lots, which are really aimed to balance out our assumptions and could really fuel the increment generation to pay for any incentive. With $8 million of total future value with a $15.88 tax rate, we did not apply any economic appreciation to this as just an exercise to be super conservative and kind of know what we know, is a future value of $3.2 million of increment. Putting that into our cash flow model and getting an understanding of how these things could be paid for, and understanding that in our model, this incentive is calculated after debt service and after administrative fees. So any obligations of the city are paid before any incentive is paid to the developer. We've amortized the debt over 20 years, assuming that, again, the $600,000 in public infrastructure costs will be borrowed as part of the city's normal 2025 borrowing. But again, that's a policy decision for the council and staff to make at the time that the 2025 borrowing is executed as to whether that will be included in there or it will be an advance from another fund. Outside of the normal costs that we've reviewed, property acquisition, public infrastructure, the only other payments are financing costs, a repayment of advance in the down years, really once the incentive is paid down and the debt is paid down, and ongoing planning and administration. So total expenditures of just over $4 million throughout the life of the district, and we are showing that the district could meet all of its obligations by 2053, which is the last year of the district. A couple things to note: in addition to being calculated after debt service and after administrative fees, the incentive is paid on a pay-as-you-go basis, meaning as the developer generates value, pays taxes into the district, there is a calculation then as to what could be returned to the developer as an incentive. In our plan or in our discussions with city staff, there has been no mention of any cash upfront incentive. We have not built anything into the project plan or the cash flow to show that the city would be giving cash upfront. It is all on the pay-as-you-go basis. One thing we discussed throughout the creation of this project plan was really correlating this project back to Sheboygan is housing demand in the 2023 housing study that the city initiated and was presented to the council in June of 2024.
One question that's not clarified.
Sure.
Could I just ask a question?
Not right now. We're in the middle of a hearing or an overview right now.
Someone else on the panel asked, is the city contributing the land to the developer, or is the city selling the land to the developer?
All right, Kayla, you can proceed.
Thank you. Really correlating everything back to the housing study that was completed in 2023, presented to the council in 2024, that projected that by 2032, the city's housing demand and projected households will increase between 1,300 and 2,700 households in that time. Outside of the city of Sheboygan, there's greater regional growth, which is really spurring housing demands and development within the county as a whole. And so major employers are expanding and adding jobs, and the demand for these starter homes are correlated, and correlated values are really in high demand. I did not reference the statistics as pointed out in the housing study. It's available on the city's website, but there's some really great statistics on the regional area and the demands for the city on housing. As far as incentives and developer agreement, it's my understanding that the development agreement is still in its works and has not been finalized yet. But any part of the development agreement that the city traditionally executes would have security provisions, shortfall payments, letters of credit, special assessments, anything to memorialize the construction schedule and the value of which is expected within the district. These development agreements will also talk about the method of financing and how that these things will be paid. We are structuring it on a pay-go basis, and it's my understanding that that is part of the ongoing negotiations on the development agreement. And again, I will just reiterate that this is an illustration of how the project could be funded. This is not an authorization of the project. This is not an authorization of any incentive. This is really facilitating the framework for how this project could be executed. And kind of summarizing everything, property acquisitions are planned to be part of the 2025 borrowing, an estimated incremental value of $8 million with taxes collected over the life of $3.2 million. Development is structured as a pay-as-you-go basis and that there's no upfront cash incentive planned. And the cash flow model is showing that the district could meet its obligations and close in 2053, which is the end of the useful life of the district. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from board members? Roberta?
Thank you. I am aware of the fact that initially, and it was Aurora and then it was Advocate Aurora, had a contract with the city to develop this property so that development would fit within the constraints of that particular neighborhood. And you might not be able to answer this, but somebody in the room might be able to. Does that contract still exist? And I am also remembering that there was a conference call with the city, Aurora, et cetera, that I was on. And Aurora said, we are in the healthcare business, not the development business. So has Aurora transferred that property to the city? And if so, how did that happen? And if so, is that contract still, the previous contract still valid? Lots of questions, sorry.
Got that, Casey?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll try to get all of it. So it was not a contract. It was actually a settlement agreement that resulted from a lawsuit involving Aurora, the city, and the neighborhood association. So it was an agreement between the three parties that once that there was provisions in there for the tear down of the property, and then ultimately anything that would replace it is required per the settlement agreement that it would be similar housing, single family, and match the neighborhood as best as possible. So working in those confines the last 2 to 3 years, Aurora actually hired a real estate firm to try to find a group to redevelop that property. They received no interest for building single-family homes there. They had multiple developers that were interested in doing multifamily and some small-scale commercial, things like that, which is completely in violation of that settlement agreement. So they reached out to the city and asked if we might be able to, through using incentives, be able to do that, because they basically felt that they had exhausted all of their options, and their firm had reached out to basically every builder in the region, seeing if they would be interested in that. We did, initially, we started working with a developer out of Milwaukee to see if they would have interest in it. They had no interest. It was just a project that they didn't feel justified coming up to the area, really too small for them to be interested in, and the incentives weren't there large enough to actually make it meaningful to offset their cost of coming up. So we do believe we have a developer that is willing to do that. They're doing some other stuff in the region, and with the current incentive package, I think it's viable. And to answer your question, we are looking at like we're still negotiating it, but yes, the land purchase price would be a part of the development incentive. And our goal here is to kind of hit that, not necessarily low income, but the affordable area. And that's what and that's why we use the 400,000, was that if they're building spec homes, we want the price right around that 400,000. So using the incentives to get that price point down to make it more entry level or affordable for kind of that largest demographic that missing middle, if how you want to term it, in our community, where it's, it's kind of on the upper end of that, but at least it matches that. The neighborhood, it matches the kind of the size and quality of the existing housing stock in that neighborhood. So this is the process we had to use for that. So we have purchased that property. So the property currently, or was tax exempt being owned by the hospital. It's still tax exempt being owned by the city. So 100% of that value coming on will be new increment for the city as a part of the TID. And then we would look at transferring it. We paid $163,000 for the purchase price of it, and we have that built in to reimburse the city as a part of this project.
Thank you.
Follow up, Roberta?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, we're going to do Tom first and then Mark. Supervisor Wagner.
I guess I did have a question. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, and the development incentives are not complete yet, right? Is that, as I understand? Could you just go through that a little more, how that works out? There's 21 sites, right?
Yeah. So yes, there's 21 sites. Every project's a little different. This one's pretty straightforward. This developer, the roads, water, and sewer did not need to be replaced as a part of this project. We worked with this particular developer and asked if we gave that 20% incentive, if that would be something that they will be willing to work with us, because as Kayla outlined, the way we write our development agreements is that the city's costs are covered first. So in this case, we want to replace the roads, water, and sewer in that area as a part of our normal maintenance. Sewer lines from 1840s, 50s.
How old is that? If someone is 1945.
So the infrastructure's in bad shape, and it doesn't make sense to put a new subdivision in and then come back later and replace all of it. So doing this as a part of the construction, it's not part of the project, so it's not really benefiting the developer. It's benefiting the whole neighborhood and the whole area by upgrading that infrastructure. They were willing to work with us and defray, any incentives that they would get based on that.
And I just wanted to point out as well as we did have the reimbursement to the city of that $163,000 purchase price. Statutes allow the city to recoup the land write-down for anything that is sold less than what they purchased it for.
Okay, and maybe you said this already, so if you did, just give me a break. Any financial?
We'll allow it.
Thank you. People usually do. I appreciate that. Any direct financial? It sounds like the financial incentives to the developer are based on money that comes in off the increment.
Correct. We've
So
structured
just want to talk about that.
Yeah, we've structured everything as a pay-as-you-go, and I can kind of highlight back. I'm not exactly sure what page it is on the cash flow in your development or in your project plan amendment or project plan, excuse me. And so once the value starts to come online, and that's in revenue year 2028, there's a calculation based off of what is the debt service payment at that point in time, what is the administrative and planning fees, and then after that, the development percentage is applied to any remaining funds. And so if the development is delayed, that it comes online later, they don't start receiving until the value comes online. Also included in the city's development agreements is a minimum value guarantee. So for some reason, which in today's housing market we can't really believe, but that homes appraised or are valued less at what we planned for, they still pay taxes on that minimum value guarantee, which I'm assuming we're in negotiations for $8 million. And so getting the understanding that the district is going to get their revenue, whether the home values are higher or lower. If they're higher, then they still pay taxes on the higher amount, not the lower amount. And then the reimbursement for the incentive comes based on that calculation after debt service and administrative fees. So again, the city gets their obligations paid before any discussions come in as to what percentage the developer will get.
All right, thank you.
And actually, to add to that a little bit, so we don't do upfront financing. So I know some of the misinformation that's been circulating around. The city does not provide TIF financing upfront for cash incentives. We do run into situations like this where we're putting in infrastructure to help facilitate. In this case, what will happen is we'll have those guarantees in there, but then there's a personal guarantee from the developer. So if the project is delayed and the value's not there, they're still going to make a payment so that we're not putting it back on the property taxpayer. So that protection's added in there as well. So on top of the increment shortfalls, they also have to guarantee that they'll make that property tax payment regardless, and they have to follow that schedule that will be in the development agreement. So kind of the milestones that are laid out for the value creation, those will be in the document ultimately that will be presented to council, and both council will agree to and the developer agree to. Any shortfalls, they have to make those payments. So they've got the increment guarantee, and then time delays, things like that, they're still on the hook for those costs.
Well, thank you. I think that was important to clarify that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Supervisor Wagner. Mark?
Yeah, did I hear right that the developer is not doing all the sites? There's some separate sites that are being sold individually, or?
No, we talked with the developer, and so again, kind of back to the premise behind this is to try to make sure that we have affordable housing. The goal is that if they're building stock homes, that, you know, we want that price point, you know, not at $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, but we wanted it around $400,000. That's hence the incentive to help defray those costs to make it more reasonable. But we also talked to them. There's going to be, like in this case, Aurora, one of the things in their condition on selling the property was they wanted to assure that they had 3 sites available that they would purchase from the developer or whoever it may be to develop them. So there will be some customization that we will allow under this. Obviously, the intent is to get this built out, but we want to make sure there's a good balance, and we're not just building, 21 McMahon out there. So we want to make sure that whatever's built there matches the neighborhood as best as possible, and that was kind of our way to make sure that limitation is there, because obviously $800,000-$900,000 houses aren't going to match the surrounding neighborhood very well.
Okay, so there would be no available sites outside of the...
They would have to go through the developer.
Okay.
So however they're doing that, we stay out of that. We have a contract that they have to fulfill. We don't necessarily dictate exactly how that gets fulfilled.
Any follow-up, Mark?
No.
All right, Roberta?
Thank you. $400,000 is an entry-level house. Okay, I get that. The incentive goes to pay for, it may cost a developer $520,000 to build a house that gets sold for $400,000?
Potentially, yes. And that's why not having so by giving the land up front, that it negates their having to borrow to purchase that land. So, we were able to purchase the land for $163,000. If you were to buy that on the open market, it'd probably be somewhere in the ballpark of 1.5 million. Add on top of that, today's cost of capital is 9-10%. If you have to add those carrying costs into the cost of the construction, and then you've got to finance the house to be constructed, you're quickly running over that. So what we're trying to do is defray those costs through this incentive, and on the other side, that helps them get a more achievable price point to match the neighborhood and to make it more, like I said, a $400,000 home is not necessarily affordable, but in our market, that's where we're at and what we're dealing with.
Okay, thank you.
Any other follow-up from board members? All right.
Thank you.
Any final comments from Ehlers or city staff?
No, the next steps are, one, this committee will set their future meeting date to review the project plans as they come out of council action. And then the next step is Plan Commission's public hearing on these two project plans. It will commence at 4 p.m. today.
All right. Thank you, Kayla. Next meeting will be TBD. We have exhausted the agenda. What is the pleasure of the commission or the board?
I move to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned at 2:44.